All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and celebrating or spending this lovely Monday evening with us. My name is Amali, and I'm the events director here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited for tonight's very spooky book talk. But before we get started, I just have a few logistics to point out for how it's going to go. First off, we will be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion, so please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk, Circe, Joelle, and Joel will all be around to sign and personalize your books right up here. We'll let you know when to start lining up for that. And lastly, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of all these Sunken Souls online using the link in the live stream description. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Circe Moskowitz, editor of the new anthology, All These Sunken Souls, which has everything from haunted Victorian mansions and dilapidated asylums to zombie apocalypses and cursed cryptids, along with featured contributors Joel Rochester and Joelle Wellington. I'm just going to quickly introduce them, and then we'll get into tonight's conversation. Circe Moskowitz is a fiction writer with a penchant for the macabre. She is a co-creator of the forthcoming graphic novel Good Morning and a contributor in the critically acclaimed anthology Reclaim the Stars, edited by Zoraida Cordova. Joel Rochester is your friendly neighborhood chaotic bisexual with a taste for the magical and also the macabre. He is an award-winning content creator and is always eager to embark on new adventures to undiscovered worlds. Joelle Wellington is the author of Their Vicious Games. She grew up in Brooklyn, New York, where her childhood was spent wandering the main branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. Okay, that is all from me. Without any further delay, please join me in giving Circe, Joel, and Joelle a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much for coming out, everybody.
Thank you.
Also, because we all dressed up, do you guys want to talk about your costumes a little bit?
You're going first.
Oh, yeah. This is so funny because I'm the least dressed up out of everyone because it's really, really specific. So I am dressed up as Sidney Prescott from the final act of the original Scream. It's like very specific. I have no fake blood because this is before.
She told me she was gonna do fake blood.
Look,
we were gonna do fake blood together.
This is on Amazon. Like,
blood.
I'm so sorry. Like, Amazon said no, not today. Like, I got no mail today. Actually, I was leaving and the mailman showed up. I was like, I gotta go. That's where I'm at. So,
and I'm dressed as Ripley from Alien. The jumpsuit basically was just the easiest thing that I could just get on and was like, okay, I'm ready. So yeah, I like the patches and like the badges and stuff. So yeah.
Yes, I am Margot from the Menu. The silk dress, the blood, the gold rings. Yes. It was very fun to put together. But that brings me to my first question, which is, what began your love of the genre?
of horror.
Yeah.
So I first got into horror because, of course, I was watching things I wasn't supposed to. And my parents have never been like big on like controlling what I watch and or read. They're more like, well, if you have questions, ask. So I was just reading whatever as a child. And so I think the first horror novel I read was probably It. And I was 7.
Oh my God.
That's also how I learned about sex. It. So, and I remember going to my parents and being like, what's this? And they were like, oh, you read It. Okay. But that's not my fault. So Stephen King is definitely my gateway. And then I also saw Final Destination and Scream. And I was obsessed. Like, I was like so into it. And that's how I fell in love with the genre.
Mine was because my older sister, she used to play like a lot of horror films in front of us.
Nice.
And so like I would just be there like, oh, I wonder what that is, and like watching it. And then she put on the like behind the scenes afterwards, just in case. She was like, you're not blaming me if I get like any nightmares or like you get any nightmares, like it'll be fine. But I think for me, like in terms of like horror fiction, it wasn't something that I read until like, I don't know. Like, I think it was just, I was exploring a lot of like different genres of books, and then horror became something that kind of fell into my lap. And I was like, I don't know if I'll like it, but then I loved it. And I think like horror just allows you to do so much with like the untapped potential of like corruption and a bunch of different cool things. And yeah, that's kind of how I fell in love with horror.
Yeah, it was similar for me. Movies. Movies were like my first love, and my dad, I don't know why he chose to play Nightmare on Elm Street. Like
He's
around
so
the house.
real.
I know. I like when I'm like 7 years old, but hey. But I loved that movie. I love the idea of like literally not being able to go to sleep because the killer is there waiting for you. Like I thought that was so awesome. So yeah, it was movies like that and Alien.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I loved Alien. That really just kind of formed my love for the genre. For sure. Oh.
Y'all can sit. It's okay. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
We don't bite.
But so what would you say has influenced your work, like in terms of horror media, like whether it be movies, books, video games?
Like in the context of all these sunken souls, or in general?
In general.
Okay.
Probably Scream. Because I really love referential horror. I think that's so fun. So like when I think of like the Elm Street franchise, my favorite is A New Nightmare, which I feel like a lot of people don't like that one because it's kind of like Wes Craven's first messy like foray into doing referential horror, and he didn't really nail it until Scream. But I really like that rawness of it. I think what else is influential? I mean, I did write a book about because I saw Ready or Not, and I was like, this is really good, but also there are untapped themes that exist here that I really want to like delve into further. And yeah, I think for me it's like very like movie first, and then I ended up reading more and more and like expanding my horror knowledge.
Yeah. I think the point that you touched upon where it was like the tapped themes and stuff, I find that like that's pretty like key for me as well, because like when I studied my degree in English literature, like I read a lot of like gothic horror, and a lot of it is very like, you know, white, and like it doesn't really touch upon things that reflect kind of what I would want to see in a gothic horror. So I was like, oh, I'm very inspired by like Jane Eyre was one that I was like, I don't like this as much, but I feel like it would be pretty cool if I wrote it in a different way.
Wait, have you read White Sargasso Sea?
Yes.
That I always think about that as it's
yeah.
so good.
I eat that up. I think video games as well is something that like is such like an untapped medium for narrative, because like it does so much. Like Resident Evil Village was such a good like video game for like that kind of horror and the suspense. Like Alien Isolation is another one where it was just like you're trying to like avoid the alien, and like you just don't know where it's gonna come out, and it can scare you at like the worst times. I remember one time I screamed and my mum came up because she thought something had actually happened. I was just like, no, I died. But yeah, I think like inspiration can be found like in such like very niche places in horror, and it's always so much fun.
I'm so glad you brought up video games, because they were very influential for me, particularly the Resident Evil games, because you're in it.
Yeah.
You're there. So, and that's terrifying. And I always found that to be like really inspiring. Also Outlast, The Last of Us. Yeah. I loved those games. But yeah.
I also was really into like the little Reddit horror stories.
Yes.
Oh, the creepypastas?
Yeah. And like the 5-sentence horror like subreddit. I was really into that.
That was like blowing up. It was like, what was it called? It was like the sleep experiments, where it was like, the people who hadn't slept for days and they turned into like weird creatures.
Yes.
Like, oh wow, cool.
Yeah, I like lived on that subreddit before like, and that was still when Reddit was like gross. Now it's like normal, but this is
now
when
it's relationship advice.
Yeah. Am I the asshole?
It's all that, but this is when Reddit was still like ugh. But yeah.
So now I want to talk about like your guys' stories in the collection, and if you could give a brief summary for everyone who doesn't know exactly what they're about. But I love that both of your guys' and actually when I was putting together this collection, I noticed that both you guys tackled obsession in very different ways, and that's why I put them next to each other. So I guess what I'm curious about is how did you seek to emphasize that feeling, like in the narrative?
Hello.
You can go first.
So my story is called I Love Your Eyes, and it follows a couple, Frey and Adam, who go to a manor house in North Wales to celebrate their anniversary. However, they're both hiding things from one another that may or may not spell the end of their relationship, or a lot more. But to find out, you're gonna have to read it. But I think obsession was definitely one of the very first things that I wanted for this story, because I never really, like, a lot of my stories that I'm writing at the minute, I like tackle other things other than relationships. And I was like, for this anthology, I want to just write something that tackles a lot of like unresolved feelings for me in terms of like obsession and kind of the toxicity of like a relationship. And I think that that kind of connection between Frey and Adam, like the love, but also the kind of fascination and the kind of the way that they both just like want each other, but for very different reasons, but then also kind of the same reasons. It was something I had to play a lot with. And I think the way it's like presented is quite interesting. But yeah, that was kind of like how I approached the obsession.
My story is called The Consumption of Vienna Montrose. And it's about a young woman named Vienna Montrose who has just inherited an old home from her grandmother, Vienna Montrose. The only reason she got this house is because they didn't have to change over the deed. And it's basically her obsession is more rooted in her grief. And it's about how she's using this house to deal with the loss of what her family structure looked like before her grandmother passed. And she's just focusing on kind of all of the wrong things. And I feel like when you read it, you get to have a lot of fun with it, because the house is a person, it's alive, but it's still a house. And it's about a house's obsession with its owner and the owner's obsession with the house.
Yeah, and it's so funny because Joel, he brought this up earlier about how Frey and Adam in his story, they want very different things from each other. And the house in Vienna, they want different things from each other. And that's what I found to be so cool about both of your stories, is they explored that in very different ways, but they were so thematically connected. So yeah, I was just so obsessed with that. No pun intended. But when you were working on these stories, was there anything in particular that you were consuming that you found influential, or that you were reading, watching?
I think my kind of story started with Frankenstein by Mary
That's
Shelley. It very much, I think I had like was reading it around the time that I was conceptualizing this story, and I was like, oh, this would be a fun angle to play with, because like Joelle mentioned earlier, there were like untapped themes in there that I was like, if I could twist them a little, I could do something quite interesting with it. Also at the same time, I was watching like clips of You, like Netflix's You, which again deals with this kind of like obsessive person who like kind of locks onto someone and is like, I want you and no one else but you, and I'll do whatever I can to get you. And yeah, I think that was also something quite interesting, that I was just like, I want to do something with you.
And you very much did that, because I feel like Frey and Adam, they very much project the things that they want onto each other, and that's not necessarily reality.
Not at all. But I think it's so interesting the way that like Adam kind of idolizes parts of Frey, and Frey idolizes parts of Adam.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's just they want to use each other for their own means.
Yeah, well, there's a lack of respect for each other,
Yes.
because they put each other on these weird pedestals.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah. What about you, though?
I don't think I was consuming anything in particular. I had a weird obsession with rabbits for a little bit, and that worked its way into it. She has, like, the house has an infestation of rabbits, and it's like a preoccupation for her and her cousin who often visits. But I really wanted to explore this trope in like Gothic literature of the house as a character. So like you think about Northanger Abbey, you think about The Haunting of Hill House, And this house, whether or not it's alive, it is a character within the story. It means a lot to everyone who is interacting. I really wanted to explore that thematically, but also what if this house was actually a character? Like this house has feelings and thoughts and shares it in the way that it can. But yeah, I really wanted to explore that.
Yeah, all that repressed. Yeah. I was sorry. I was thinking about just like house's character. I think that's one of my favorite tropes in horror. Yeah. But what was the process of drafting it for the first time? Because I was there with you guys for all the edits and revisions, the many revisions, the many edits. But I was not there with you while you guys were like writing it the very first time. So I'm very curious about like how that started for you.
Oh, I usually outline everything. I did not outline this, which was so different for me.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
because you're
I'm like compulsively an outliner, like down to like chapter by chapter. I outline, but I didn't do that for this. And I wrote it 2 days before it was due.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, because I was.
You're insane.
I was struggling so much because I was like, I don't know exactly. Like I had this vague idea where I was like, okay, it's about this girl. She's inherited her grandmother's house. She is obsessed with the house and the house is obsessed with her, but that's not a plot. That's like a premise. And so I like could not for the life of me.
Plot for me.
I guess. but like, no, things need to happen. So the whole time I was like, I don't know how I want to resolve this. Like, I don't know what like I'm trying to get at. Like, I don't know if I have a thesis statement. And I really do think that a lot of my work, like, I have a thesis statement. It's not like I'm trying to prove or tell you or teach you anything, but like, this is like, I want a story to be like I can summarize it in a thought.
That's such like an academic way to approach it.
Look, I almost went to grad school. I was almost an academic.
You were an academic. You have a degree.
I guess. Well, it's a degree. It's in creative writing.
I mean,
It's still a degree.
It's a degree. But yeah, I struggled so much, and then I don't know. I put on the Haunting of Hill House score. And I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to write about this house and this girl and the rabbits and her never brother. And I really wanted to like have characters that were really present, and also the second biggest character, which is her mother, who is present but absent. If that makes sense. She's like revolving around, and it's kind of during that time, my grandfather was ill. And so I was thinking a lot about grief. And like preemptive. And so that kind of like really influenced me and walked me through everything. So yeah.
Mine was like, looking back at how I wrote that, like this short story, I was like, because I did outline. It was like a very brief outline. Like I think I split my story into like parts and was like 2 sentences on like what happens. And then I think it was like, I was the same as Joelle. Like it was like 2 days before deadline and I was like, I have to write this now. And so I think I just literally like sat down, put on a writing playlist and just like banged it out. And then I was like, okay, it's done. I hate it, but it's done. But I think the one thing that I loved about this story, and I think it almost like didn't make it to the end until I was like, no, I need this, was the last line of the story.
Yes, we fought very hard for that one.
Yeah. I was like, I need the last line to stay the last line because it's just so like, it packs a punch and it's like impactful, and I was like, I need it. But I think the drafting process was very much like it was like a swirl of madness. And I think it was good in a way because like my characters are also kind of in a way mad themselves, and so it was very good to get into their shoes a little and just walk around a little.
Yeah, I drafted mine. Mine was like the only one that was drafted when we went out on submission.
You haven't said what your story's about.
Huh?
You haven't said what your story's
about. Oh my
about.
gosh. Okay, yeah. So I pitched mine as Black Summer meets the Talented Mr. Ripley, and it is about a girl who steals her twin's identity in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. It is very unhinged, and I wrote it. I think I wrote it over a weekend before we like went on submission with the proposal, and I guess it was kind of a whirlwind of madness because I don't know. Like I knew what the ending was, and I was writing towards that point. And I knew that I was using the zombie apocalypse more as a way to explore a certain theme, which is, I guess the appeal of tokenism and like how you might want, how one might desire to like have all the rewards that being a token might give you, but how that is actually can be very harmful in a cage of its own. And so it was I feel like I was so focused on your guys' stories, though, that I ended up always neglecting mine. So I always would leave mine till last. I was like, okay, try to get these revisions in for everyone else's, trying to get these edits in for everyone else's. And it's like, oh, yeah, right, I have a story in this. But, I'm forgetting my questions. So you guys already talked about, like, the themes in yours. So I'm wondering do you find that, like, the themes that you explored in these stories kind of reoccur in your other works? Like, is there something that you're always, like, returning to?
Yeah, I feel like I constantly talk about, like, loss and grieving and, it not necessarily, like, a loved one, but just, like, the transformation that comes with grief a lot of times. Like, sometimes it really turns you into a different person. And so I revisit that quite a bit. And also like self-isolation. I really explore those themes in like my young adult work, my adult work, and when I work on middle grade, I even talk about that too. So I don't know, there's just something about that because I remember, like, I feel like I am so unisolated, if that's a thing now. Like I feel like my life is so full, but I remember when I was growing up, I felt very like singular, like a lone island kind of thing. And in some ways I find that I am like, okay, I like developed very much in isolation without all this influence on me, but like that doesn't necessarily lend itself to happiness. Like sometimes when you're developing as a person, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy. And so I explore that in a lot of my work, I think.
I think I explore obsession a lot, like whether it's obsession with a person, obsession with like studying, like I'm doing in my current adult work. I think it's just obsession as a theme is so like rich in like possibility, because it's like how far will someone go to like continue their obsession with something. I think loss is something that I like exploring a lot as well, like whether it's like a loss of like family or like loss of like kind of like identity or like something that like was once yours and is just like gone. Relationships I think is something that I didn't realize I was working on in my adult work until like I was like, oh, like there's this relationship between these two people that is like really broken, and I need to figure out like how it broken, but also like how they fix it and like stuff like that. But I think especially like with so much of like from this story, it's really helped with kind of developing those further.
Oh yeah. I feel like I also explore grief a lot, also rage. I think generally I tend to write about survivors in survival and the lengths that people will go to survive.
Yeah.
And sometimes not in the healthiest, best ways. Like sometimes like the ways that we choose to survive are like not great. And I'm very interested in that. And like the effect that has on a person.
I always think it's more interesting to like explore someone that's not a perfect survivor than
well,
someone who performs
what
that
I'm
perfectly.
Interested in, because I'm like I'm so tired of the perfect victim narrative. I'm like, how can you be perfect when you've been through
so much,
such terrible shit?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse my language. I don't know if I'm allowed to like use curse words, but yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so works in progress. What's next? What are you guys working on?
I mean, Joelle just had a cover reveal.
Yes, she did.
My next book comes out next July. It's called The Blonde Dies First, which is a sapphic horror comedy that is again, very referential of the genre. I call it my love letter to Brooklyn and horror. And it's about this young girl. She lives in Crown Heights. Her sister goes to private school. She does not. And it's her twin sister. And her twin sister decides to graduate a whole year early. And so because she's like feeling a type of way about that, this girl decides that they're going to have the best summer ever, which starts with going to her sister's best friend's like graduation party that they're throwing for her. And they pull out a Ouija board. And these are all like their friends from their neighborhood are all like black and brown. So like Ouija boards are not a thing in the household. Like that's not, but because this girl, her name's Devin, she's like, oh, I'm down, I'm cool, like it's supposed to be the best summer ever. She doesn't say put away the Ouija board. And they accidentally summon a demon who follows Devin and their friend group out of the house. And Devin has recently bleached her hair blonde. And so now this demon is intent on killing them in the order that people usually die in horror films, with the blonde being the first. And it's about them trying to kill the demon before the demon kills them.
Ooh. The moral of the story is don't use Ouija boards.
Yeah, that's weird.
Also,
don't do
don't
that.
bleach your hair.
Yeah, don't bleach your hair. Like, yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm excited too.
And the cover is very gorgeous.
I love that cover.
It's I'm currently working on a gothic dark academia called Watch Us Bend, Watch Us Break. It basically follows 4 students at a Welsh university who, whilst researching the decline of magic, inadvertently summon a ghost that may or may not start killing people. And the ghost helps them reveal a conspiracy that undoes everything they know about magic, themselves, and everything that they know. It's basically my, I want to say like love letter to academia, but also it's everything that has caused me stress from researching a degree. Like the fact that institutions will want you to succeed but not provide the resources to take care of yourself. The fact that like just professors like will want the best for you but then also do things that put you in such an awkward position. It's like, it's just my baby.
Isn't this the first time you've said the title publicly?
Oh, I haven't said the or title.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
I have an or title because
Yes.
when I was in university, I studied 18th century literature, and a lot of like Frankenstein had Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. So I have an or title because I feel special. So, but that will be revealed once I've finished the draft, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
What are you working on?
Yes.
Okay, so up next for me is I have a graphic novel coming out in 2025. It is about a lesbian vampire who takes over a bed and breakfast in New England, a small town, New England town, and she falls in love with a butch contractor. It is very unserious and a lot of fun. And then as for novels, I'm working on like a literary horror that I'm comping to Mariana Enriquez meets Mona Awad.
8.
Yeah. That's been really fun to draft. But one more question.
Okay.
So if you had to choose a theme song
Okay.
for your story, what would it be? And I'm sorry, but only one.
I have 0.
I'm breaking out my Spotify.
Like, yeah, me pulling off my Spotify.
I'm like, hello.
Asia did. Okay, so for the virtual event, Asia had to pull up her Spotify.
What did
She
she
was
say?
like, I'm gonna cheat. To be fair, I think
it was soundtrack music.
Yeah, I think my
She
theme
would.
song
No.
changed.
It was Ethel Kane.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, soundtrack music. She would pull
my
out.
even
Like, where are my playlists? Oh my god.
Well, I already know mine would be "Creep" by Radiohead because my
Fair.
protagonist is a freak.
That's fair.
I have like 2 now. Oh,
I think
I can only say 1.
yeah, one.
1.
One.
1. Oh god. I'm gonna go with "Idol Worship" by Paramore.
Okay. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Ya Berne by Halsey. It's like the last song on her album.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, just I think that would really fit everything that's going on with Miss Vienna Montrose.
Amazing. Okay, so now FAQ time. Is there any questions?
Oh, we have 2 already.
Go for it.
All right, so pick your favorite bad horror movie, like the one where you say it and everybody looks at you like you're picking that one. For an example, mine is Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, yeah.
So
Silly horror film.
they asked, what is our favorite silly horror film? I think.
have mine.
Oh, I have mine too, I think.
Okay, what is it?
Attack of the Killer Clowns. It's really good.
Mine is Final Destination 3.
Oh, not too much.
Which one is that? What?
It's the one where they're on the sunbed.
The sun.
That's
Well,
a good one. Whoa.
Wait, but what's like the main catastrophic
No,
event
it's
that
like-
happens in that
Is
one?
that the one with the logging truck?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good one.
Wait. That inflicted like a lifelong trauma on me because whenever I'm driving on the freeway and I see a large truck carrying anything, I immediately move into the other lane.
Do it.
I'm not following that truck
No.
ever.
The fact that you said Final Destination 3 is crazy when it's the best one. Whoa.
Wait. Okay. So what? The first one.
First one's the
is-
airplane.
The
Okay.
airplane blows up.
Okay. What's the second one?
The motorway? Oh wait, no, to be fair, that's the probably the worst one.
Wait. What is?
The like the motorway accident, I think it is. The second
Okay.
The motorways accident?
one. Motorway. Fine, the freeway accident.
Okay, I'm British.
I'm being bullied. I'm being bullied.
No, you're right. No, Final Destination 3 is bad. Okay, what is yours?
I don't know if it's okay. Yeah, it is bad. Grave Encounters. It's just so funny to me because he literally like acts like he's Zach.
That's
like,
crazy.
Literally like adopts his entire personality.
Do you watch it a lot?
I've
the
seen
way
it-
you're talking about it, it means that you watch it a lot.
I've seen it quite a few times. The effects are terrible. It's really bad, but I just love horror where it's like I'm not really sure what the word is, but like in House of Leaves, where the house just kind of like keeps getting bigger, although on the outside it like looks smaller.
Oh, so it's like a
Spatial horror,
TARDIS.
spatial horror. I don't know if there's a term for that, but it's very much like that, and I love that kind of horror.
Fair.
Yeah.
What do you find horrific or what compels you in horror?
What do we find horrific, and what compels us in horror?
Oh, that's a tough question because
That's a good question.
that is a good
Yeah.
question because now I'm trying to think. There's like there's differences between like what scares you and what horrifies you because nothing really scares me, but I'm trying to think of what horrifies you.
There are things that scare me,
Really?
like bugs.
Oh,
I-
that I know.
The roach.
That I
The
know.
roach.
Actually,
That I know.
Trolls.
That I know.
Yeah.
I have to tell everyone that we saw a book in I think it was here on when we came. Was it
Oh! It was
Yeah.
Deliver Me by Elle Nash.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to buy Deliver Me by Elle Nash, and I was curious about what the UK cover looked like, and then
I think
Joel was about to show it to me.
I described it.
But he was like, "Wait, there's a roach." I was like,
In
"Oh
someone's mouth."
no, I don't want to look at that
No.
ever in life."
I remember once I made the mistake of like describing a bug, like saying that I had a bug in my home, and you were like, "You gotta burn it down. You gotta burn it down." I was like,
She had me watch the original Suspiria.
I
because I'd
did.
never seen
Oh
it.
no.
I forgot.
No. She failed to mention all
forgot.
the maggots.
Forgot.
And I was like terrified. I was like, why would you do this to me?
Forgot. Because she was talking about watching the new one. I was like, the new one's bad. Like that's bad. It's ugly. It's ugly.
is-
It's ugly. Like
I will give it a single compliment. And it is the body horror scene where she's dancing and like all her limbs
Are-
all like twisted
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Like that is gruesome.
that's very cool.
Yeah, that's like the only cool thing about it though.
Oh, what I find horrifying, body horror, which I love.
Oh, body horror. Yeah.
But it's like my favorite genre, but it is, oh my god, it freaks me out. Like I saw Titan, is that how you pronounce it?
Titan?
Titan?
Titan.
Titan. I saw that, and then
That was
when
fantastic.
about to give birth and the skin's pulling back and you see a metal belly and I'm like, whoa, whoa. Like that took me out. But I saw that in a theater with an old French couple, which was really funny because they were in the front row and I was like, whoa. And there's no one else too, which is why I was like, and it's a small theater too. I'm like, you can sit back, like it's fine. Like, but no, they're up front. But crazy, I love body horror. What
That
about
movie
you?
is so unhinged. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
The scene where they're like on top of the fire truck and they're dancing. Oh, I
What is
remember.
going on?
I remember that
What?
scene. I remember I had to look away because I'm really bad with like secondhand embarrassment. Woo! I was like, whoa! I can't look at this. This is worse than anything else in this movie. And she had sex with a car. Like,
Okay, mature protagonist.
we don't need to talk about what Vienna's doing.
No. I'm just.
We don't need to talk about what Vienna's doing.
I think.
It's fine. What horrifies you? What horrifies you?
Okay, what horrifies me, but I also am fascinated by is cannibalism.
Yes.
Real.
Cannibalism is like one of those things where like tender is the flesh, like
Hannibal.
How dare you not mention Hannibal in Joelle's
Hannibal.
presence?
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true. But yeah, I think like what drives someone to consume a human body, I find riveting, but also like, ew.
Do you follow Richard Sykin on Twitter?
Yes.
Have you seen what he has to say about
No.
cannibalism? You should look it up.
Okay,
It's really
okay,
interesting.
Okay.
What is it like? An essay?
No, it's him tweeting. Richard Sykin is like a very famous poet. And he like disappeared for like 6 years and then he came back and was like, I had a stroke, but I'm now on Twitter. And everyone's like, okay.
Oh.
And he's like writing long tweets because people treat him like he's an ask bot, which is weird. But he'll respond. But yeah.
Bless his soul.
No, he cursed someone out the other day and it was real funny. Like I was like,
I didn't
real.
on Twitter at all because I had to get off there. I was like, enough.
Yeah. But what horrifies you besides bugs?
Besides bugs. I guess I really enjoy possession narratives.
Yes.
I really love stories that explore when your body is being colonized by some like unknown entity. Like I think that's really interesting and there's so many things that you can do with that.
Do you think
Yeah.
Sinister is scary?
Yeah, I liked Sinister.
Okay.
I thought that the twist with it being that he like kind of sort of possessed the kids to murder their families was kind of vicious. I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh,
crazy.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow.
I'm asking because I recently read this article where it was like these are like this like the scientifically scariest movies and they said Sinister was the scariest and I was like, are we sure?
Interesting.
I was like, are you sure?
Well, I don't know about the scariest.
Yeah, I was like-
maybe it's the scary kid thing because like.
Oh,
affects
yeah.
people.
It was like,
Children
oh,
is
this
so
is like
fun.
your heart's racing the most when you see Sinister. And I was like, what? Okay, sure. But I was like, I don't know.
I'm fascinated by a creepy child.
Yeah, I mean, you can
Yeah,
love
Demonic
it.
children, great.
Yeah.
I guess they do nothing for me.
You just see when you're like,
No, exactly. Like I'm a kid. I can punt you. What are you gonna do to me? You're 7. Like kick the child. It's not like it has demonic strength.
I mean, then it'll start crawling on the walls like.
I mean, sometimes, but sometimes they're just like a weird kid. Kick the kid. like it's fine. Like,
Did anyone else have any other questions? Hi. But you're so real for that. Same with like dolls too.
oh, kick that doll.
okay,
Turn the doll.
Why are we running from Annabelle?
Sledgehammer to a doll.
No, why are you entertaining a demonic doll? Break it in half. Like people being like, "Ooh, Chucky, burn Chucky." I don't understand.
I don't know. Okay, but Chucky. I don't know. Maybe he might have a chance.
That's a plastic doll.
He's pretty smart.
That's a plastic doll.
He's pretty clever.
Plastic is
Melt
I
flammable.
don't know. I'm giving,
Plastic
I'm
is
giving
flammable.
him his props.
That's
okay?
crazy. Like, yeah, like, no, it's just like, why are we entertaining demonic, like, stuffed animals, like, dolls, like, that's the thing that is flammable. Like, I'm sorry, you had a question.
I was actually gonna ask about how it was for you writing. Okay, this question is funny, but horror as a black person with black instincts,
because sometimes I wonder, like, I'm really interested to read this book, right? Especially your story with, like, her being, with the house being taken over, in the sense that, like, you know how the joke, of course, is when we watch those things, and it's like, why would I walk towards the closet that's shaking? Like, why would I, like, you know, and especially, like, exploring those things as a person that has probably laughed at those very moments in the theaters. What is it like writing things that are actually scary to you that you would, like, experience maybe?
So what is it like writing things that are actually scary to us as
Black people?
Yeah, in horror. Considering that we normally make the jokes that we would never be in that situation.
No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
because I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like,
Not me.
Yeah, no. So some,
Me.
yeah.
But no, I think that is something I always think about, because I'm
Me
like,
too.
why would she be here?
Mhm.
Why would she be in this scenario?
I think you have to create inescapable scenarios.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like it's really got to be like you're
well,
here.
I mean
like,
I mean that's why she's in a zombie apocalypse.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't. That's unavoidable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think with me, that is the question. Like, why doesn't Frey just, like, leave and, like, go?
Yeah.
And I think, like, the question kind of allows you to think about, like, what they might be getting out of it, or, like, what they want. So, yeah, I think, like...
Well, yeah. Well, it's like you, in your story, you kind of depict the really terrible trap of, like, abusive relationships. How, like, you know, there's the honeymoon phase where it's like, it's hard when you, because usually it comes from someone that you love
Yeah.
very deeply. And that's why it can be so hard to leave.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're not always bad all the time.
Exactly.
You know, they're not like a cartoon villain.
No, true.
Yeah.
And I think for my story, I think it's like there's this house, but it's like when you're grieving, you're not thinking logically. Like the path that you take with grief is not like a linear one. And so I think that is kind of the trap in itself. Like she can't escape that. Like that just exists. She lives in that. And that's why she's like in this home that it's not like it's not like the house is malevolent. It's just in love with her.
It's obsessed with her.
Yeah, those are two different things. Like it's not malevolent. It's just like I like that you live here. like that's nice. So
No, some of my favorite lines in your story are actually the house talking to her, because the house has a POV in her story. And I'm like, oh, these are such banger lines.
the house has a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings, and it doesn't like when other people are in the house. Just her though. So
Only her.
only her.
Any other questions?
Oh.
Yeah.
This is more of kind of like a shop talk question, but what was it like pitching this book and like going out and proposing on this book, and then what was it like contacting all these different writers?
Okay, so what was it like?
Yeah, what was it like? What was it like?
Let me repeat the question as is policy. So what was it like pitching this book and writing the proposal and telling the contributors that it had sold? Can you please? Writing the proposal for it was very fun. I had a really good time, mostly because initially I had tweeted on Twitter. I was like, I would really like a Black horror anthology, but like a YA one. And everyone was like really enthusiastic about it. At first, I was hesitant because like I had never written an anthology before. It was not something I had attempted before. So I really wanted to get it right if I was going to do it. But once I like got over that, you know, hesitation and that fear, I had a really good time writing the proposal. It was fun. And then when it sold, I mean, because the thing is going on this mission, it's largely out of your control what happens. So by the time that we got an offer, I was like forgotten about it. I pushed it out of my head. I was like, whatever. And I was like, oh, wow, it sold. Wow, like this is gonna be a real thing. And telling all the contributors, it was really awesome that they were still on board after it had been like months of kind of like silence. And this is actually how we had become such good friends.
Yeah.
Was because I had approached them to be part of the anthology, and we realized we were like kindred spirits.
Yeah. My first interaction with Circe was like me underneath this tweet like summoning black writers, and I'm like, me, like think about me. And then Circe said, okay, great, and then ceased all communication. That was it. And
I'm
then
an Aquarius. Okay.
look, is that not what happened with you too?
I got
Reached out.
I had
and
an
then
email, and then it was like through a contact form, and then I was like, I don't know if this is spam or not. And then I was like, Asia, what do I do? Asia was like, go ahead, who's like our other friend. And I was like, okay, Circe, I'm in. And then I don't even know how long was it until you responded.
I did not talk to anybody.
Oh yeah.
I was like, we're going on submission. Are you guys on board?
It was so. And then our friend Asia was like, I don't like that I'm talking to all of you separately. A group chat. And that is now how we are all friends. She just put us all in a group chat and was like, everyone, we are friends now. And then Circe would still not respond in the group chat. like still would just a lurker. I'm like,
Aquarius, that's my defense.
and it's not even like a group chat on Twitter. It's like a text group chat. So I'm like,
well, no, at first it was
it
on
was,
Twitter.
but then even in the text group chat, Circe's still not responding. I'm like, huh? But eventually, she did start responding to our random texts, and now we're very, very good friends.
Yes.
But no, it was rough. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna get a response, like, cause just a little like on Twitter and then a little Twitter DM being like, cool, you're in. Not even an email.
It was like an ominous initiation.
First of all, I was not so callous in that. Okay? I was like, hey, if this happens, would you be interested in doing it?
And I was like, yeah. And then you a little heart and then no email. Like you got an email.
I got it.
I had to email my agent and be like, Circe Moskowitz might email you. Who's to say though? Like, I don't know. But yeah.
Thank you for that. Oh, dude, are there any other questions? Hi.
Would there be a possibility of doing a second part to this anthology?
Will there be a possibility of doing a second part to this anthology? Maybe a little more in the future, just because it is so much work there's so many emails. You have so many people to email, like many contributors, the editors, the marketing, publicity, like all these people. So, and then plus all the edit letters, all the revisions, like that you have to manage. So I think I would like to do it again. I need some time before I do it again. Yeah.
It was a lot for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. But worth it. 'Cause you guys are awesome.
So are you.
Yes,
Thank you.
you really ate with that last story.
No, literally.
Any other questions?
Oh.
Hi.
I have just been thinking about the way that the horror genre, I don't know, it's cool in the fact that it is open to like young creators. I feel like in a way that other genres aren't. Like I don't know, I've just been thinking about like Talk to Me and how that movie has become so popular, and it was just like done by these two like brothers who had a YouTube show. And like other movies like The Blair Witch Project or like Skinamarink that are like so low budget but like got such a huge following. So I guess the question here is just like your thoughts as young up and coming writers in the genre, just like how that feels to you, what you've been like witnessing with other young writers around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can someone repeat the question? Because like my brain, I was like,
So broad.
No, it's okay. It's like, as young creators, like, what are our thoughts about how horror is a very accessible genre for other young creators as well, and the ways that more traditional genres aren't?
yeah, that's a good question.
I think it's because horror is so flexible.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
can do, and like it's really easy to like intersect it with like other genres like literary horror, like fantasy horror. Like you can really do a lot with it. And I think because of just the possibility, like queerness and horror kind of go hand in hand together a lot of the time, and like queer people kind of more so go more towards horror. I feel like. Who knows?
It's been that way for
A very,
centuries.
very century. Yeah. And I think like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of like young, like our generation now are just like more so going towards it because we're a little bit twisted, and we just love
Well, I think part of it is probably growing up in a world
Yeah.
such as this. Like,
true.
I mean, you know, a lot of people I know, I mean, spent all of their early 20s in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how they've been growing up in that sort of really claustrophobic environment that is the world right now. So that's probably why I feel like a lot of young people are gravitating towards the genre, because it's a way for them to explore all those feelings, you know, without judgment or, you know,
That's true.
restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it's because horror has a lot less rules.
Yeah. True.
A lot of like, just by nature of genre, like genre does have like, I think people like to say that genre doesn't have rules. They do. Every genre does.
It has like set expectations.
Yeah, once you decide that you're writing a genre, you're entering a social contract with
Yeah.
the reader. You're agreeing upon like certain things, and there are certain things that you do in certain genres, and whether or not you're subverting or not, it exists there. But with horror, I just feel like the only rule is be scary. And like if you don't succeed at that, you kind of flopped. So like that's the one rule. And so I think that it's like I don't think it's easy to be scary. But I do think that having that one rule of be scary is a lot easier than having to follow like a billion different genre conventions and then subvert it or like go with it and all of that.
And it doesn't even have to be like scary. It can be like unsettling.
Yeah.
And like
Or even disgust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like there's so many different types of scary that I think some people tend to gravitate towards the and it just doesn't work. But I feel like now like we are getting into like the kind of horror that creeps on you.
Yeah, I feel like not to cite Stephen King, that goofy man, but
But he's so great.
No,
what
no.
you mean?
I wish I had never learned that he had a Twitter, bro.
Like, we don't talk about that.
Like I'm like log off, old man. Anyway, I feel like he really does a great job of distinguishing the difference between fear and terror and horror. Those are three different things, and you really want to reach for terror, and that doesn't necessarily always mean that it's you're like jumping scared, but it is like something innate.
I do love a good jump scare, though.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I know some people didn't finish The Fall of House of Usher.
I'm like halfway through it.
Is that a passive aggressive comment at me?
There are two people here who didn't finish The Fall of
I'm
House of
halfway through.
Anyway, I didn't find that one so scary until for some reason the final episode I got scared like 3 times in a row by that stupid little clown. I was like, bro, like, and he just kept coming at me. I was like, whoa! And I watched it during the day, like it was daytime. I was working at the same time, so like I would look up and then boom,
Clown.
that gesture in my face, like chill. Like that was crazy. I was like, why do you keep coming? Like you're done. Like go away. But yeah, that like I did like that jump scare. It was the first time in a minute that I've enjoyed a jump scare like that.
Maybe I have to finish it.
You won't. It's okay. Though.
It's fine.
It's fine.
No, I'm busy with One Tree Hill right now.
Oh, I got her on that. I got her on
I've
One
been
Tree Hill.
watching it for the first time.
Yes.
Dan Scott, the
Oh.
man that you are.
Yes.
He is such a villain. I'm like, but I love him though because he's such a complex character. I was surprised. I was like, wow, they
He's
really
so
ate
great.
when they wrote this guy.
They did.
Yeah.
We were talking about it yesterday, and we described it as Shakespearean. I got laughed at, but it is Shakespearean.
No, but it is.
Like-
It is. It's so tragic. It's so brutal.
Yes, like
Okay, but what Shakespeare play would you liken it most to?
oh, Hamlet.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, maybe I need to watch it.
yes, no, like literally, it's about like 2 generations of brothers and like
Okay.
trauma being passed down. Like Dan Scott is walking around pretending that his son is not his son. Mind you, he has his last name, and everyone knew he was with his mother. Like he has a legitimate son, and he's like trying to like he's like pointing at the bastard son and laughing while he walks past. Like that's his whole thing. Like he's like, you have no dad. Mind you, that's he's the dad. Like, that's crazy. Like,
He's so hilarious.
He
I
is.
will never forget the God doesn't watch sports line. I was like, sir, what are you saying?
no, when he tells his grandson to tell his bully about his like alcoholic mother, like that's
I was
crazy.
dead.
Like, why would you say that to a 5-year-old? Like, that's no, we don't do that. Yeah, but I would kick a kid, but if it was possessed, like only possessed children, not a normal child.
We do not condone the kicking of children.
I think we're about to wrap it. Okay, cool. So, okay, it's time for us to wrap up the discussion now. But I'm so glad that you guys all came out.
This was so much fun.
Yes, it was. It was a really fun discussion. So thank you. And please buy our book, read our book. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all again so much for coming out. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you, Circe, Joelle, and Joel, of course, for celebrating this wonderful launch with us. So just a few quick reminders before we wrap up. If you're still with us on the YouTube live stream, you can buy a copy of all these Sunken Souls by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those of you with us tonight, we have plenty of additional copies available for purchase at the table where you checked in. We also have some copies of Joelle's novel, Their Vicious Games, and Kalynn Bayron's novel, You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. She sadly wasn't able to make it, but both of those books are so good. So I highly recommend checking those out. All three of these wonderful writers will be around to sign your books. That's just going to happen right up here. So we ask that you just give them a minute to grab their fun little Sharpies, get settled, and please just grab all of your personal belongings with you so we can start to rearrange the space. All right, that's all. Let's give these folks one last round of applause. Thank you all so much.
You did pretty well.